Good afternoon, y'all. David Atkins, target individual. So anyway, today I'm here to continue part 3 in Project Soulcatcher reading, and we're going to start with noise generators, jammers, and scramblers. Hope everybody's having the best weekend they can so far. Trying to stay as positive as you can. V2K is, boy, they're going at it rampant in my head, but I'm doing my best to ignore it. I find out the more multitasking I do, the more easier it is to ignore because I'm thinking in multiple threads. Also, if I just know your messages will get answered eventually. I get a lot of messages, and some days, due to my targeting, I don't even feel like answering no messages, but they will get they will get they will get answered, and we will get you scheduled for an interview. And I'm going to start setting aside one day to make calls and talk to TIs and stuff, because sometimes I'm limited on time. Plus, they've been putting me to sleep a lot lately, but I'm doing my best. So, and just please be patient with me. All right. White noise is defined as a uniform random distribution. The reality that computers don't actually generate a pure random number. The reality is computers don't actually generate a pure random number. They generate random numbers using a complex deterministic algorithm with a seed value sensitive to initial conditions. Radioactive decay is used for true random signal generation. With sophisticated analysis and massive computing power, the built-in random number generators of personal computers can be reverse engineered, endangering certain types of encryptions. When noise only occupies a particular part of the spectrum or is not uniform in its distribution, it's called pink noise. Noise generators are kind of a jammer. On the CD that accompanies this disc, which I don't have, like I said last time, because I got this book online, companies and plans are included for white noise jammers to block cell phones, TV signals, radio receptions. In the first volume of this book, the first volume of this book by now, it was never published. He said he got threatened, and he was told not to publish it or they were going to hurt him. So anyway, it says jammers work on many theories depending on what type of signals they are to be jammed. Overpowering the receiver with noise is the most basic strategy of the jammers, but newer technologies have increased the sensitivity of the receiver's decoder using error connection, adaptive echo feedback, and ultra-wideband techniques. Jammers and scramblers are also studied in the field of electronic warfare, which uses radio frequency interference to disable equipment. Devices like the wave bubble can send out a counterpulse or broadband noise to jam radio and phone communications. However, changing electromagnetic polar direction needs to be taken into account in such jamming devices. Low frequency waves are very difficult to jam too, requiring too much power and setup to actually cancel out the influence. We will only briefly mention how all these fields of signal intelligence and communication warfare interrelate. False flag signal intelligence includes cloaking and camouflaging technologies mentioned later in this book. For now, let's just consider simple false signal jamming techniques. A good Army security agency example was to falsely trigger Russian nukes. The device was called Milky 29 and included tamper-proof techniques. It had to be placed a couple 100 yards from the missile launch pad and buried. The device was simple in nature compared to today's signal jamming technologies that use digital signal processors. The Russian nuclear warheads did not arm themselves until they were 10 meters out of the launch mechanisms. The Milky scanned the spectrum, rapidly putting out the detonation signals. If the Russians had launched their nukes, they would have exploded upon launch. The tamper-proof mechanism of 2 ounces of C4 was triggered using inductance, capacitance, and electric field of anything near where it was buried. A similarly based technology is being used to jam or detonate roadside bombs in Iraq. Electromagnetic pulses can be used to explode suicide bombers before they reach their targets, but due to damage of electronics in the vicinity, the U.S. has been reluctant to use the technology to protect buildings. Communication interception and overpowering a counterfeit communication is a preferred method for communication channels. Pirate radio stations are a small version of this concept. In the information abstraction of white noise generation, scrambling, and jamming, we entered the field called cognitive warfare and counterintelligence. Throughout this book, the same themes and different abstraction levels should be recognized by now. The idea behind jamming and scrambling information is thoroughly studied in U.S. Air Force College. There are common cognitive errors that most humans have. Taking advantage of these errors in warfare for domestic strategic deception is the directive. This includes disinformation, misinformation, and misdirection through the flooding information streams of the target society. The informational noise is so you see they flood you with all this information, and most of it is misinformation. The information streams, the informational noise is created using common weaknesses in human algorithms, often called the method. For example, by telling a true statement such as mind control is being used, and then finishing the article by a statement that aliens' development will split the readers into either believing all of it or none of it. This sort of belief segmentation is discussed in the cognitive modeling and decision tree hacking sections of this book. Viewing human beings as subsystems of larger systems lead to non-lethal weaponry and disabling techniques and technologies. Humans receive information through their senses. How can one jam and scramble human senses or even the mind itself? The term non-lethal is, of course, a euphemism for this class of weapons. Anything done in repetition is lethal. Many are used for torture to keep the body alive while inflicting unimaginable pain. Our focus here is just jamming the senses and mind. Ninjas used flash power grenades to temporarily blind their opponents. Today they call them blinders and dasers. Tear gas is another example of how to temporarily blind the opponent. Cheap, high-powered, diode infrared lasers can permanently blind an opponent without them ever seeing where it came from. The UN has banned these permanently blinding weapons. The US had to retrofit the M1 tank laser rangefinders because they had the potential to blind. Strangely, the US can blindfold, rape, torture, and kill, but can't permanently blind. Read the book CIA Medical Abuses and Their 30-Year Journey into Madness. Also read Secret Weapons. Humans have many senses and capabilities. It's traditionally thought that humans have 5 senses, but this is an oversimplification. For example, the inner ear creates a sense of balance and direction, but isn't described in basic biology textbooks. Hair senses touching differently from that touch on the skin, but no difference is made in textbooks. Humans are made up of far more than 5 senses. Vibration is a subcategory of tactile senses, but uses a different mode of interaction. There are countless examples. The objective is perception warfare is to jam all possible human senses from balance, vibrational, sight, sound, heat, smell, taste, etc. Typical non-lethals use malerodents for smell, dazzlers, blinding lasers, tear gas for sight, rock music and sirens for sound, and more sophisticated gases and signals for balance, drugs like LSD, etc. All these traditional methods are being deprecated due to this newer technology perfecting, overriding every human perception and function at higher levels of understanding. Those poor young people who get seduced into this industry thinking they're defending their country, many will be terminated simply because they know too much to retire. Everyone eventually gets betrayed. That came from a former CIA operative. The Nazis didn't lose the war, they just had to move. Mark Phillips, a former CIA agent, said. Torture does not represent the values of this country. Those who order it should be prosecuted according to the rule of law of this land, but not those who did it. Imagine that. Obama said that. Torture does not represent the values of those who order it should be prosecuted according to the rule of law of this land, but not those who did it. Wow. Phreaking and mobile phone cloning. Phreaking is an old term for hacking into communication PBX routers. Mobile phone cloning is another form of phreaking. Yet again, we find direct analogs to mind hacking techniques. While communication warfare is much a part of this integrated information weapon system, the previous volume covered this topic. Our attention is how biological minds can be cloned and hacked. Our human host, phishing and brain scanning, finding host. How are human hosts identified and found? While the possibilities are limitless, our interest in current metrics for selection of non-consensual human intelligence, spies, remote control soldiers, Manchurian candidates, finding spies in other countries is often called a phishing trip. Phishing is a term on the internet which means to email spam to many millions of people until one bites on the bait. In psychic warfare and psychic spying, it's similar. Phishing is a hunting tool and sport. It works on luring the fish to bite on something that will capture them. There are many examples in evolution which work on this principle, like the Venus flytrap. In information warfare, this is true as well. Watching what people research can bait the potential spies to be captured. While most humans non-consensual experiments ask Why me? There's no rhyme or reason other than the U.S. government selects targets at random, like in drug trials, which need to be spread across all races, education levels, and culture for accurate data on effectiveness. Protocols in human projects require that they are studied for a lifetime. Only if their budgets increase or targeted persons die do they grab new projects. There seems to be a cap at a percentage or a fixed number. To date, they have not released the size of the programs officially, and in the past they have destroyed tens of thousands of records when Congress had asked for them for investigations. Code processor usurpation. Graphic card processors have a flaw in that they can execute code. Hackers figured out a way to utilize a subprocessor to avoid detection of infiltration code away from antivirus software. Example code provided on Example, this technique could be an influential advisor like Dick Cheney or a first lady who influences the president. These situations make the designated leader merely a figurehead, similarly to how the subprocessor can take control of the CPU. Okay, inserting secret hooks into device drivers. So what they're saying is the same thing they can do with this computers, they can do with the brain, but different process. One of the most prevalent computer hacking techniques is to insert a handle in the operating system that execute other services or processes without being detected. There are several equivalents in the CIA realm. They use blackmail, extortion, doppelgangers. Doppelgangers is a fictitious shape-shifting character that behaves similar to the person whose function they have subverted while appearing approximately the same. Many crime organizations use similar tactics. One might think of this as a mole. So I don't mean literally shape-shifting. I mean he plays all roles really good. I hope you understand what I'm saying there. He's shape-shifting character that behaves similar to the person whose function they have subverted, while apparently approximately the same. Many crime one might think of this as a mole. Malicious payloads. As always, you, the reader, must understand the computer science lingo before understanding the equivalent of hacking into human minds. Malicious payloads is a term for malware, software and computers that intentionally cause damage to information systems or hardware they are connected to. These programs can come in form called worms, Trojan horses, or viruses, but the lingo goes on. When it comes to biological computing system, there's an equivalent in computer science jargon. Of course, those that believe in an untouchable soul will not be able to comprehend this science. The brain, however, is easily accessible and has no firewall. This section covers some of the malicious payloads from mind viruses. Replacing personalities and memories, information streams simulating dreams, interactive mind control, systematic overthrowing. Just like when NASA's offered to build terrorist brain printing devices in airports, the reverse technology is also available. One not only can classify personalities and moods, but induce them into a host. This has been the thrust of much of CIA behavior modification experiments in splitting personalities. Behavior psychologists who work on creating Manchurian candidates and remote control assassins have used trauma-based conditioning methods in the past. Usually they choose adults and children who have been sexually or physically abused. In recent decades, they have been trying a new technique of walking well-adjusted targets back into childhood under hypnosis, inserting child abuse memories. This helps with the process of breaking their will and splitting their personalities. Our research team could not find any successful experiments using this particular process. Governments spend enormous resources on unifying the populace. Religion has traditionally been used to unify cultures. However, a more intrusive form of unification has begun, which develops children and adult brains with a very constructive box, dream, and thought entrainment. Brain entrainment over the population is being tested to see if they can restrict and induce a limited set of thoughts, thereby controlling popular opinion, coercing human perception to a common reality, and in essence stealing their souls from self-determination without their knowing consent. Governments find it easier to govern when everyone thinks the same. Personality implantation using electromagnetic entrainments help this agenda. Think of this as a virus that copies itself to every human being, effectively taking over their natural order of society. Protected memory, partitioning, and cognitive containment. In computers, certain segments of memory can be protected for other segments writing or reading to them without the correct permission. In this brave new world of mind monitoring and hacking, certain thoughts will cause panic or trigger an alert for an operating system to handle. In this case, operating system could be a big brother government. The US and Russia are the biggest users of this mind monitoring networks. Cognitive containment is an active approach to limiting the probability of certain thought patterns. For example, if a government wanted to keep the awareness of the existence of mind hacking technology down to a minimum, they could dampen or divert thought patterns that were leading to understanding and rediscovery. Classical methods of discrediting government technology secrets that leak out using psychological tactics, which make the ideas appear absurd or like science fiction. Program the populace using the mass media information stream still seems to be preferred today. Cognitive containment also includes thought and memory filters, which are involved in the CIA program EDM, electronic dissolution of memory. Entire populations could be made to forget about Holocaust, for example. This is not exaggeration of the capability of the current technology. Specific memories can be targeted as well as general thought and patterns. For example, the propensity towards violence can be amplified or dampened in target hosts. Now, in most extreme cognitive containment techniques become a mind prison. This is why the techniques listed as a malicious payload of mind viruses. The payload forces an obsessive compulsion mental focus on just a few topics. In an ever more extreme form, it's just a perpetual infinite looping and repetition of thoughts and words. This payload completely shuts down the host, be it a computer or biological. This was one of the first capabilities discovered back in the 50s and 60s. Simply by amplifying a target's brain signals back into the same host disables their ability to think clearly. Since the advent of computers and digital signal processing, the effect can be more amplified by random pathway amplification of millions of stored patterns that can be triggered by template recognition of the techniques of the brain bit streams. Alter personalities, split personalities is a form of portioning a human's memory and personality banks. Infinite looping. Infinite looping is another form of denial of service attack. In the psychology industry, when it occurs naturally, it's termed brain lock, leading to obsessive compulsive disorders like washing hands, cleaning, or even anorexia. But in the induced complex, it generally exhibits a cognitive quality of paranoia in people watching them. The human virus computer program can find patterns of the mind that will loop over and over again with each stimulus with no diminishing quality. This is just one kind of attack into the human mind and creating a limited cognitive containment signal. The average human's personalities and speech patterns are far more limited than the subjective experience would be led to believe. Most people loop and say the old things like a dementia patient of war, forgetting who they have told their life stories to. Horrific and strange obsessions can be created. For example, there's a rare example of people who have an obsession with amputating their legs or hands. They seem normal in every other way. A mind virus locks in this brutal obsession, very feasible these days. If the brain signal can be recorded or artificially created, it can be fixed to constantly trigger it in any target's brain over and over. These are just variations on the same technology that's used to create cycle bombs, for example. Just neural programming through repetitive training sets into a target's brain. The program could be anything from obedience to obsession of washing one's hands. All right, let's go up here to 14. Let's see down. All right, it says protected memory parsing cognitive containment, and then down here it says often this technique of mind hacking is called mind control, a very loaded word with a bad connotations. A better description is thought limitation or cognitive containment. This feature of technology doesn't allow the host mind to think outside certain prescribed patterns. Okay, and 15, infinite looping is another form of denial of service attack. I'm reading the bottom here. This is the bottom stuff right in here. The denial of service attack on the human mind is also referred to as remote lobotomy. This wireless version replaced surgical, electroshock, and insulin shock methods in recent decades. All right, let's get back to the reading. I just like reading the bottom because it's important stuff in some cases. The program could be anything from obedience to an obsession of washing one's hand. Daemons. Daemons is a computer science which means services that run in the background. In Windows operating system, they are called services or device drivers. There are programs running in the background that can be triggered constantly running to control other systems. In our research objective, they can be used to control emotions, personalities, and humans, for example. The word demon is very appropriate given how the mythology describes demons as possessing one's mind and body. No exorcism can defeat neurological weapons. Crashing the operating system through error amplification. An interesting strategy for mind viruses take control of civilization came from HIV. If one can build a virus that attacks the most aware, most intelligent, most likely to recognize the infection first, the virus would be more successful at dampening an immune response from the system to defend itself. Certainly, it would delay a response, at which point the infection might have already spread significantly to the point there are no free thinkers left to respond. There's Russian literature which looks like it was written by a native English speaker that describes how they made sure they took out the greatest thinkers in their culture when when implementing this kind of societal control strategy. The Cold War was very much a strategy of taking over governments and cultures around the world. We now say these countries have puppet governments. The simplest and often accidental malicious effect of computer viruses is a destabilization of the operating system to the point of crashing it. Poorly written viruses will crash an operating system as a symptom one should take notice of. In the world of hacking, crashing the operating system has a couple of different meanings. One is literal, that is, through cloning an attacker's brain patterns onto a target. Visual hallucinations, hypnotized states, and aggressiveness can all be used to make the target crash a car or airplane. This is a popular objective for silent assassins using the mind hacking systems. The other parallel to crashing the operating system is to destabilize either an individual mind to the point of cracking or becoming dysfunctional. Later in this book, discussion of specific systems will reveal how they are used for this objective. For example, to create a bipolar disorder in the target, Alice, a chatterbot, artificial linguistic, I forgot how I forgot the rest of it. It tells later on what it stands for. It's artificial linguistic. I can't think of it. A chatterbot program is used to simplify emotional swings of the target. In counter resistance techniques, this is called ego up and ego down, as well as Jeff and Mutt. At the greater scale, the objective is to destabilize the government and making it dysfunctional. The latter objective historically has been practically implemented by inciting civil wars in third world countries to destabilize them and oust a leader not obedient to the mind hackers organization's demands, usually under the umbrella organization of the United States. Denial of service attacks. Denial of service attacks on a computer system are like one of the most devastating to online businesses. A store like Amazon.com can lose millions per hour, but worst hit to the capital markets view of the business security. This uncertainty often leads to billions in the market valuation loss manifested by the opinion. And stock price declines. Denial of service attacks can be done to many kinds of electronics, such as phones and faxes. Jamming is a form of denial of service attack. In the simplest form, it can be done through repeated calling to a phone number, for example. The reader has already learned about reverse signaling to sensors called reverse echo techniques, ultra-wideband and cycling jammers, and adaptive jamming algorithms. But in mind space, natural language takes on the form of jamming information from sender to recipient. The mind hacking strategy group tested the NSA system, Echelon, by flooding it with keywords and knowing their triggers by piping messages through Arabic country networks. The mind hacking strategy group were warned by the cyber warfare unit to quit effing with us. They are paying attention. This was a denial of service attack to the Echelon system. Denial of service attacks are not just to cell phones, but entire areas of countries can experience satellite jamming and radio broadcast of their radio broadcast TVs, infrared car locks, garage doors, and alarm system. All signals from remotes can be easily jammed or copied for total control. Traffic lights that are equipped with infrared sensors can be hacked to turn green. They look for flashing ambulance lights, but flashing your bright lights at the right time in intervals will also force them to change back to green, denying the cross traffic signal. You, the reader, will learn a lot of spy tricks in this book. Remember to use your knowledge for good and not for selfish purposes. It's easier to destroy than to create. It's easier to be greedy and childlike than to look out for your fellow man and control your greed power. Mind hacking technology has become so popular amongst many Department of Defense divisions that each research lab has its own language and spin on the techniques. For example, the Direct Energy Directorate operated by the Air Force calls the mind hacking program the Personal Effects Program. It discusses confusion of the enemy as well as controlling all senses from visual hallucinations to temperature and smell. They even brag about taking over the will of a person who is operating a machine and thereby controlling the machine. The U.S. Army calls their program the Zombie Projects for fearless remote control soldiers. The CIA has the longest list, but started with MK Ultra mind control. Even the so-called Honorable Navy has had their human experimentation of recruits with mind control, LSD, extreme doses of electromagnetic, and experimental, can't say that word, but United States government, declassified top secret MK Ultra documents obtained from the Library of Congress through the Freedom of Information Act. And the word I was going to say is right here where that arrow is right now. So now I'm going to move the arrow around. Okay. The effects of the kind of denial of service attack, also called remote lobotomy by the CIA, would be identical to psychosis. Every single human being has been made to believe if you hear speech and respond to it, that person's crazy. Well, I'm not crazy, and I hear speech and respond to it sometimes. Well, I hear speech, but I don't respond to it except when I get tired of it and want to talk back. We all have seen homeless people walking around talking to themselves. This kind of attack would precisely mimic several forms of mental illness as defined by the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders. Mimicking illnesses is what this agency has invested many resources in for the purpose of discrediting. This book has no intentions of diving into the political aspects of the history of its technological development, but it is a curious note that several CIA scientists involved in developing these hacking techniques are also listed as the first source of a couple of mental illnesses accepted into the DSM manual. If you, the reader, are interested in understanding the subjective experience of these mind hacking techniques from people who have experienced them firsthand, hundreds of firsthand encounters have been published in books. See the further recommended reading in the back of this book to locate. Mind hacking is far more advanced and commonly used than the average citizen might believe. The majority who have experienced an attack of this kind attribute it to alien abduction or haunting, having one's neural circuitry tampered with. It is not an experience an average unknowledgeable person would be able to describe in coherent, articulate framework, instead of sounding mystical, spiritual, or crazy. Denial of service attacks on the human mind takes many forms. That is what this book is about. The ancillary technologies which the reader learns about are only to provide a context, a mindset or framework for which all this came about, of a growing cultural military virus. Audio cortex distraction is one of the best denial of service attacks. It was accidentally discovered along with a microwave oven while standing in front of a high-power radar. It turns out that many animals and humans can hear microwaves and can be behaviorally affected by these complex intensities of the electric and magnetic forces. After all, aren't we just electromagnetic chemical sentient beings? They passed laws that electromagnetic microwave harassment was illegal in many states, like Michigan, and even UN agreements, but the U.S. refused to sign. We have many governments, local, state, federal, and the secret, with different standards and different protocols. We come from a proud heritage, but something has changed in all of us. Sensory overloading and amplification are techniques of enhanced interrogation, torture, brainwashing, programming, context switching, brain entrainments, and hypnosis. Triggers and triggered payloads. Viruses often wait in dormant to be triggered by a specific time or event. A computer can be infected with no symptoms until a trigger occurs and then execute a malicious payload. Sleeper cells and sleeper assassins are likely triggered payloads in computer viruses. CIA programs like Monarch or Sleeping Beauty hope to create dormant agents to be activated at a future time. In maturing candidates, altered personalities are first created in a context. Then a trigger word, phrase, image, sound, or neural communication entrainment can trigger them, like how attack dogs are trained. Hypnosis is a big part of the Pavlov conditioning method. Triggering a programmed assassin or activating a sleeper cell is equivalent to remote method invocation in computer science technology. Later, when one reads about brainwashing, they can see how these loyalty affinities are reprogrammed, turning agents of one tribe into another. Personality overlays and simulation. There's a lot of overlap between the mind hacking methods described here and fundamental technology that drives them all. A famous Harvard behavioral scientist and professor, B.F. Skinner, leaked to a class that the CIA's personality database was stored in Colorado. The personality database should not be confused with FBI personality profiling techniques. This personality database is a feature set representing raw cognitive models. Not only NASA can build terrorist brain print recognition systems, but the reverse is also true. The brain prints of personalities can be induced into targets. The CIA has an endless history of studying how to induce split personalities. The effects having personality overlay induced on a person often appears to be multiple personality disorder. If the external brain signals are highly bioamplified, that personality overlay can completely take over the character of host. Another distinction that must be understood is there are personality overlays, simulated artificial cognitive models, usually viral and human algorithmic cloned real human hive mind participants. Each is a variation of the same technology, and it can become confusing, which is operational both from the subjective experience of the host, from the for the objective mind hacking investigator's assessment. The military calls this strategic personality simulation. Roughly 7 qualities have been classified to describe general temperament and demeanor and are very linked into the emotional control centers of the brain. These roughly correlate with the genetic propensities of behavior and mood. A personality overlay can change these 7 qualities. A host can be made aggressive, demure, calm, agitated, hot-tempered, contemplative. I know we've all targets have felt this at one time. Unexplained feelings of anger, aggressiveness, calm, agitated. They can make you sleep. They can make you stay up. The various mixtures of 7 qualities creates new personality types experienced in the targets and clone minds. They often call these eigenvectors of personalities the 7 dwarfs. I know everybody remembers the 7 dwarfs. In Malicious virus payroll, a simulated cognitive model with a destabilizing personality program is run in the host brain. Remember how an earthquake will shake a building to the ground only with resonant frequency heights of the building. Analogously, a personality can be rocked by the personality overlays and pain programs to become unstable. This leads to a classification of bipolar disorder by psychiatric profession. Diagnosis is merely a set of subjective assessments of symptoms and unfortunately, unscientifically, never reveals or investigates the microcosm. The microcosm would describe very different reasons why mental illnesses arises. Cancers have many thousands of different causes, and therefore it's unlikely that one cure can ever be found due to this fact. Overgeneralizing categories of symptoms and not differentiating the names of illnesses with vastly different causes creates further confusions and misunderstandings. Psychobombs. Inducing mental illness or merely mimicking the symptoms of these behaviors is the objective. Psychobombs can be turned into Manchurian or programmed assassins. They have many uses that are instrumental in social engineering and manipulation of government laws and media. So, for example, if a social engineer wanted to make guns illegal, they could trigger many psychobombs at once using guns as their weapons. The public will react to fear-driven media stories to pass laws against guns. Psychobombs are also useful in other fear-driven tactics used to have public give up their rights and privacy. Sound familiar? Often they are used to distract the media's focus on more pertinent and important stories. The CIA DoD groups that programs mine for these illegal clandestine operations often call themselves Satanists. There are many reasons for that other than just a cover story and confusing the target. The Satanic Bible speaks of creating scapegoats and patsies and fall guys. Anyone who writes or speaks about these topics gets attacked by psychobombs who are led to believe that the writer or speaker is part of the conspiracy that's torturing them. This is why the names of the innocent are protected in this book. Those who are not speaking about these atrocities and should know about them are the guilty parties. Interview with a government Manchurian candidate project. Roughly 9 days before they begin the tortures, a man dressed in an Army Reserve uniform shouted to me from across the street on 2 occasions. I wasn't sure if he was speaking to me the first time. He yelled, "You will become a psychopath." Obviously, in hindsight, this was part of a confusion game they later called prophecy. Their behavior modification techniques are scary and impressive. They tried to make me do the unthinkable. They are running deadly war games on their own country and people, destroying countless families and economic values, all the while hiding their research in the news as some psychopath who went crazy for no reason. You have to experience it for yourself to believe it. Destabilizing the personality using these methods creates psycho bombs. These can be recognized in people that go postal. Destabilizing the personality years before a programmed assassin or a psycho bomb is triggered helps to create track record for use of plausible deniability. The targets of realistic operational simulation missions on random humans usually are discredited in the news as a person with a history of the patterns set forth many decades ago mimicking mental illness onset. It is particularly true that the person has a mind virus, which causes mental illness in these experiments. But what the general public never gets to know is what causes it. There are environmental and genetic factors which can cause disease. Of course, there are natural mental defects arising from life experiences, physical wiring, and chemical imbalances. But the newsworthy ones are the one always relate to the mind hackers practicing their trade. The objective of creating a cycle bomb is to have the host kill and destroy as much of the community and surroundings as possible with no real target. Subjectively, the subject thinks this is the only way for change and to get immediate attention of their message. This is a proxy method used to create terrorism. They've done this to Myron May, Aaron Alexis, and so many more. Terrorism is used to create change. Psycho bombs usually are there to cause mayhem and random acts of murder. This allows the programming country not to be called sponsors of terrorism, including domestic, so as to justify more government protection and loss of freedoms. People always follow suit because security is more important than freedom. It is a fundamental algorithm and drive to protect our children and allow our species to exist. These algorithms can be utilized to gain more power and influence too. Depatterning is used to remove all meaning and hope. This is necessary for false flag operations and to create intense meaning, like how suicide bomber programmers use religion or extreme patriotism to convince their constituents. It is about erasing survival instincts. The mind hacking strategy group studied how to defuse a psycho bomb or at least redirect them towards their true enemies. It is dangerous to create these humans that are about to explode because they can be used by other organizations and governments and then reprogrammed for another mission. Okay, side note. Interview with a psycho bomb. How did they almost make you go on a killing spree amongst your children? Answer. Obviously, if they had been successful, I wouldn't be having this interview today. Their psychological techniques are impressive to say the least. Through torture, they created intense anger in that no one would help me stop the government from doing it. No one wants to get involved. Then they pipe messages into my head, kill everyone. They don't care about and they don't care, and their tax dollars support this level of torture in citizens. You shouldn't care about them. They're selfish, dumb, disgusting creatures, things like that. They try to convince me if I go on a massive killing spree that finally the news would cover my torture and people would care. Sounds like the Myron May story too. Why did they stop torturing you? They said I didn't create a good enough track record of seeking psychological help. Psycho bombs can be used to manipulate the public and giving up their gun rights, for example. Could they be used to scare and terrorize the public so the public's willing to move towards a police state? Good question. What other uses for psycho bombs can you think of? And I'm going to read this last thing and I'm done for today. This will be part 3. This is real deep, so I figured, I'll stop right here so you can listen to it again and again if you need be. Programmed assassins and other CIA human assets. Program assassins were made famous by the book and movie Manchurian Candidate. The basic idea is to make the asset get close to the target, then trigger the asset to assassinate them. One such CIA program was called Artichoke. Project Artichoke looked for subjects that were roughly 35 years old, sociable, and educated. The goal was to have the subjects kill a political leader, including one in the United States if no others were identified. The size and scope was never revealed, nor the results. No one would ever agree voluntarily to prostitute themselves for an agency that does not pay them. Most people can't kill other people, even in self-defense. Creating a pathological altered personality is one of the major goals of these CIA programs. This is why mostly women are grabbed for trauma-based conditioning and split personalities. Femme fatales are more useful in the spy industry. Only a small percentage of those brutalized go on to become split personalities and further programmed. The idea is to create sociopaths that take commands but are able to traverse most social groups with ease by putting on some charm and require no payment other than opportunity to do someone else's bidding or against their own will and knowledge. How are program assassins made? The conscious state is split and conditioned with emotions. During one altered torture state, they force visualization of the events that the programmers want done. This is like how athletes visualize their skills over and over before they actually perform them. A program assassin is forced to visualize the assassination of their targets over and over using different methods taught to them during their programming duration. Sleeper agents and assassins are called such because they remain in stasis, zombification, or altered state until they are being used and triggered when needed. Terrorist sleeper cells operate in a similar manner, except they volunteered for their mission. The word terrorist is just a word formality. Many U.S. created program soldiers and assassins are used in false flag operations marketed as terrorism by the media, or sometimes they go after those that created them. The movie and book series Born Identity illustrates this from a Hollywood viewpoint. Here's another side note. Interview with a programmed assassin. Interviewee. They tried to make me kill several U.S. generals and Ministry of Defense officials. It was like the movie Clockwork Orange, where they took a prisoner and conditioned him to shut down in the sight of violence. However, in my case, they took a good, sensitive man and tried to make him into a violent killer on command. Interviewer. Who did this programming to you? Interviewee. I know that Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton were behind my suffering and torture. I heard their voices. The author visited Hillary Clinton's office as a senator to see if she had any pull for congressional investigation. Her office wasn't interested. Clearly, the CIA had used voice transformation to make this Manchurian candidate be misdirected. The difference between psycho bombs and programmed assassins is merely the selection of particular acts of destruction or people to kill. The subjective experience for the programmed assassin can be completely different in motive and that expected from the normal crimes of passion. John Lennon and President Ronald Reagan shooters example of programmed assassins that had no understandable reason for their violent action. Hence, we call them insane. There have been several failed attempts in the past at creating a delusional love obsessed psycho assassin by the CIA. These never make the news. In fact, these kinds of assassins seem more successful at following through with their mission than the artificial hate-induced directed delusion. Whew, sorry, I had to catch my breath. In addition, the successful mind hack assassins seem to be unaware of the technology and what's controlling their thoughts. The mind hack projects that are told through biocommunication technology that they are government property never seem to be quite able to get triggered, although many talk about it. The Oklahoma bomber may be the exception. Programmed assassins are created by the government and for a particular target to kill on a hypnotic command, and they are generally not supposed to remember the act after they commit it, using a technique to split their personalities and create dissociated alters. This allows them to pass polygraph tests and the like. And I'm going to read the terrorists and then I'm going to stop for today. The only real difference between psychotronically created terrorists and psycho bombs in the target is that the target selected for them. A programmed assassin has specific targets. A mind hacked terrorist is pointed to a group causing their suffering. A psycho bomb has no target selected. They choose their own, which are usually neighbors, co-workers, and bosses. Psycho bombs have a strong paranoid personality type played into them. All their fears and suspicions are amplified to point of delusion, an error that turns into fact in the mind of the hacked. This is quite purposeful, and the scripts used by the mind hackers encourage these particular paranoid delusions for creating psycho bombs. Similarly, the mind hack that are turned into terrorists have head games played with them in such a way as to make them think a particular country is behind it. Many examples have been interviewed and successfully deprogrammed have targeted Russia, China, Iraq, and Iran. These mind hacking projects were successfully convinced that these countries were behind their wireless torture. Terrorists created by mind hacking techniques don't differ from the usual understanding other than means and indirection that they are created. Voice of God weapons offer an even better means to create them in addition to just radical religious beliefs. The most famous malicious psychotronic virus is called Satan 666. The rumor said it was released by the Russians, but of course pointing is always used to redirect the disappointment of who is really responsible for the English acronym. One should easily see that Russians are atheists and would not use such English acronyms and words with their creations. In addition, the Satan virus matches the capability of the U.S. systems called Satan. See the chapter and silent assassination through adaptive networks is what Satan stands for. And I'm going to go ahead and read this last part and I'm going to be done. Proxy agent provocateurs. U.S. Hold on. It says, see the chapter known on U.S. biocommunications weapon system. Proxy agent provocateurs are used to invoke the defensive algorithms of humans or aggressive algorithms by a false leader. This creates counterinsurgents playing into the hands of provocateurs. With neurological mind control weaponry, anyone can be used as an agent provocateur. Mind hacking is a torturous process described as a live mental vivisection. And the other reason that fake classifications were made up for the DSM manual was that the Department of Defense needed a way to thwart off attacks by thousands of human projects that may be seeking to infiltrate their organization seeking revenge. The process of getting a security clearance that involves many questions surrounding mental illness systems. This is a way to weed out the citizens that were put through the torturous mind hacking program. Enemy combatant is a newer classification that includes any subservice to the government organizations, including targets of this kind of weapons attack. I might as well go ahead and get the. No, I'm gonna stop. We'll start next week with handles, handlers, and proxies. And I hope y'all enjoyed this. Hope it was very informative to you and woke you up to something. You know, I know reading this through again is really second time, or well, actually, it's my third time reading this book. Really is opening my mind to stuff I missed the first time I read through it. So it's helping me too. So anyway, God bless all TIs. Hope y'all are doing well.